Assalamu alaikum, friends. Welcome to Let's Chat. I have with me Mevish. Assalamu alaikum, Mevish. How are you?
Assalamualaikum, how are you?
Alhamdulillah. So, this is just another talk show. We're going to be discussing some social issues like before, with an intention of providing some solutions and tools to our listeners, to our followers to empower them, inshallah. And today's topic is self identity. So, this is something which is being thrown around pretty often nowadays. It's becoming common. We are hearing these words: self identity, self worth, self cares, and things like that. And we're going to cover all the rest of them too later. But today's topic is self identity. So, let's start with that, inshallah. So, self identity, Mavish, go ahead and explain what self-identity is, because a lot of us hear about it, but we really don't know what exactly it is.
So self-identity basically is a foundation of who you are, and it is a composite of three things. It is firstly at the core, it is how you perceive yourself, your self-image. Who am I? When you ask that question, who you see yourself. Second, it is the ideal self, who you want to be. And then a large part of it that comes in is your self-esteem, how you think people see yourself. And the reason we kind of also wanted to start from there is because it is the foundation of a person. When let's say a child is born, it's mostly about the child's innate nature and how the parents then go on and kind of nurture that identity. And they might kind of develop his identity in a sense that is authentic to the child, or they might nurture, kind of give the sense of belief to the child that you are this kind of person. For example, if a child, for example, is innately really good at sports, very well coordinated, very artistic, so those are some of the attributes of the child. And the parent, if the parent goes ahead and nurtures that attribute, they put them in different sports and they succeed. They put them in artistic classes and all that stuff, they succeed. So they're building up their self identity, and they can go ahead and kind of picture the ideal self, where they want to go with that, where they want to grow. But if the parent doesn't help that person succeed, reach their authentic self, but instead represses it. For example, if they're into music and the parent goes, "This is not something we do. This is not something our family does," or that's an expectation of them, that this is not something good. So they might repress it, and they are repressing their self identity. Now, they can go ahead in life and they might divert into different parts that are more artistic. It could be not music. But basically, what I'm saying is self identity is your self image. And that's the foundation of who you are and how you perceive the world and how you grow as a person. If it's a twisted sense of self, you might develop unhealthy relationships and unhealthy ideal self, because people have told you you are this. And because you have a false self image, you're going to create a false self ideal. And that's where we kind of want to talk about how you can stop that and how you can grow to be into a healthier person and you feel comfortable with your own authentic self.
Okay. So basically, self-awareness, knowing more about yourself and uh, your uniqueness, that you're different from everybody, and how are you different from everybody, and what are those characteristics you have, and being okay with all those characteristics. It could be some positive traits, some negative traits. Everybody has positives and negatives. People are not perfect, but being aware of who you are internally and how you feel about yourself, that which is self-esteem, but how you feel about yourself, your body image, your emotional state, your self-image, what kind of person I am. I'm a good person or a bad person. Now all this is shaped um, or affected by a lot of external circumstances or factors. But that is why it's very important to have a strong self-identity, because we are very quick to get affected by external factors if our self-identity is not strong. If I don't know myself to the core, who I am and what do I want from myself and my life, and what kind of things I want around myself, what is healthy for me, what is unhealthy for me, what does love look like for me, what does hate look like, all of these perceptions, which are definitely shaped from a very young age, but we do have our own sense of understanding of all these things in relation to ourselves. So basically, your relationship with yourself is
Mhm.
right. And then it of course, like we said, that it's affected by social and external factors, which are our friends, family, our spouse, our kids, our coworkers, anyone we meet outside, right? So again, that's why it's very important to have a strong self-identity. So if we receive a negative comment or a suppressing um, response from someone, like you mentioned, like a parent suppressing something or enhancing something in their child, you as a person should know yourself to be able to deal with those negative comments or feedbacks in a healthier, productive manner, because it could be a great source of motivation or discouragement, right?
Mhm.
For example, if I criticize you on something which you were already shaky about, right? You would immediately believe those things. Your
Yeah.
the negative response of that thing, you would immediately believe, and you're like, okay, yeah, she knows something about me, and she said this. Maybe she's right, and I'm not good at it, right?
Yeah.
But if you were strong enough to know yourself better, you would go through a sequence of questions in your mind to before you believe on a certain thing or a certain comment about yourself, right? So yeah, basically core identity is a core of your beliefs, and your self-esteem is standing on it. And I cannot emphasize enough on how important it is to have a strong self-identity, because that is what your self-esteem is standing on.
Mhm.
um yeah, go ahead, add to it.
And also, so one of the things that you mentioned was how if someone tells you, critiques you about something, and based of how strong your self-esteem is, you could, as you said, go either that this is not true, this is not who I am, or you could kind of spiral into a thought process of, yes, I am, this is who I am not good enough, this is what I have been told, and you just keep going and going and going until you might reach a very dark place. And as a child, no one really tells you. No one really sits down and tells you how to be self-aware, how to be self-aware of your own emotions, of your own triggers. No one really does that. And as a child, your world is your parents. And whatever they tell you is what you believe. This is, if your mom and dad are telling you that you are this kind of person, this is going to be a part of your self-identity. You are going to intake that and you are going to act on that. And that's why one of the reasons is so important in how you talk to a person, because one of the studies they found is the way parents talk to their child is what the inner dialogue is built. What you say to yourself is what your parents told you when you were young. So it's very important how parents also speak to their kids. Now, let's say you had a childhood where your parents told you that you are this kind of person, they kind of labeled you. And then on top of that, you had culture expectations of this is who you're supposed to be. And that is not something that vibes with your idea of self identity, with your what you think you are, who you think you are. If you have an idea about yourself, you're going to say, you're going to stand up and say, this is not who I am. I'm sorry. I love you, but this is not the path I'm going to take right now. But if you don't have that core strength of knowing yourself, you might just take that path because it could be easier to take, or because that is what you believe is your path. And you could be unhappy your whole life. For example, for me, as you like, this is not something no one teaches you. How I started to kind of become more self-aware and explore my feelings was when I started taking my psychology courses and all that stuff. We were trained to do that. We were trained to understand our own biases. So that's not every person is taking those classes. No one's taking psych classes, so no one's aware of that. So sometimes what happens is you grow up with these triggers that you're not self-aware of, with these thought processes that you're not consciously aware of. So you might, let's say, build up relationships that not might be the most healthy. And what I mean by that is, for example, as a child, your parents didn't take care of you emotionally. For example, when you got hurt, they ignored you. Or when you came to them with your pain and trauma, they ignored you. When you grow up, and let's say you have friends or even spouses or any kind of relationship where they ignore your need for connection, you're going to think this is normal when it is not. So that is why it's really important. And we're going to talk about some tools that you can use to gain that understanding. First, to gain an understanding of who you are as a person, and then what can you do about it? How can you keep going? And your self-image is going to change all the time. As you grow up, you're going to have different needs, you're going to learn different things, and your self-image and your ideal self-image is going to grow. And but one thing that should be always be growing is also your self-esteem, that you can do this. And once you have that core strength that this is who I am and I can do this, and you have that inner motivation, that's another part of it. You're not depending on other people complimenting you, saying, I am proud of yourself, you can do this, but you have that inner dialogue. I can do this. I have that strength with me. It really changes the way you look at things. And that's also part of your self identity.
So emotional awareness and acknowledging all those things about you, whoever you are inside, and your thought processes, acknowledging those thought processes, and then separating what someone else has told you about you from what you feel about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Example, I grew up in a environment where the women were always suppressed. Like the girls were always told to be quiet, to be good, you have to listen to everybody and you have to follow, you have to say yes to everything, etc., etc. And anytime I didn't do that, I was not verbally told that you're a bad person, but there is a there's a feeling that was given out. There was a vibe, there was this energy that was coming out of, or what I was receiving was that I'm not good. I'm not doing the right thing. If I spoke my mind sometime, So there was constant inner battle that was going on inside me, that there's two people I was fighting. There's one person is what everybody thinks who I am, and then there's one person within myself who is not matching. These two descriptions of people are not matching together. So I had to really sit down. I mean, it took me a long time to even realize that this battle is going on in me. And because of that, I wasn't happy, right? You need that, sense of uh, mature, what I want to say, sense of understanding, or
Yeah.
yourself to that level, that you, or a sense of awareness basically, that you can figure out that something is going inside me and I need to sort this. What is it? And why is this going on? Why am I feeling so restless? Why am I not happy? Why am I not satisfied with myself? Why I always feel I'm not enough, or I'm
Mhm.
wrong? Why do I have all those feelings? And these are all negative thought processes, And I'm not saying that we should not pay attention to those, but what happens is that there is an imbalance. We pay attention to the negative so much that we completely dismiss the positive side of ourselves. And then we just choose those negative parts and just believe and become that part. Imagine if our inner dialogue is positive and we keep telling ourselves those positive things about ourselves, we will become the positive person, we always were. Nobody's born evil. People choose to behave certain ways because of because many reasons, whatever is going on outside of them, inside of them, circumstances, life situations, etc. So yeah, it is very important to first of all acknowledge, or find that sense of awareness, what's going on in you, what are the patterns, thought processes, your inner dialogue. You need to really separate yourself from external circumstances or
Yeah.
factors. What
And
It's important what my mom thinks of me, or my dad thinks about me,
yeah,
or my husband, but it's more important what I think about myself, right?
right. And that's the hardest thing to do, kind of separating yourself from the social factors, creating that boundary between who am I and how other people perceive me. How other people perceive me is not interlinked to who am I. And it's so very hard to do, especially as you mentioned, the culture kind of and the society and the environment you kind of brought up in. You lived in a country which was okay with that kind of thought process and that kind of lifestyle. So it was probably a lot harder to find, even though you were super restless, you didn't have, I'm guessing here, but did you have any kind of person around you who kind of broke that mold? Who were yeah, I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna sit in the kitchen while the men ate. I'm not gonna follow the rules. Like, did you have anyone in your life or anyone in the society who was like kind of breaking that mold?
Really, no.
No,
I really,
it's hard.
yeah, it was very tough. It was suffocating because I did not have anyone to talk to about these,
Mm,
because we are not open to these kind of discussions. Our elders, and I don't blame them 100% because they don't even know what it's all about,
yeah.
the life they have lived, and that's what they expect from others as well. But with the changing times, this should have changed. And I'm not saying it was all bad, alhamdulillah, there were good moments and good stuff. Alhamdulillah, my life was not all bad, but this not knowing who I am really affected my self-esteem. I would say that that's partially my fault as well, because I did not pay attention to that side of myself, and that made me a people pleaser. That's how you become a people pleaser. You want to please everybody. You want, or what Mesh thinks about me, I want to be that. Okay. What my husband thinks about me, I want to be that. What my mom, my dad, my friends, everybody, whatever they think about me, that is who I want to become, rather than what I want to be, or
Mm,
actually, or who I want to become later. I want to become later. It's never, that is not a question. That's something that
it's not very healthy, is it? It's you're basically pouring from an empty cup because you're always taking care of others, their emotions, their needs, and not really paying attention to what you need to build healthy relationship or just feel good about yourself. You're always depending on outside validation, outside compliments to tell you that, oh, you're awesome, you're doing this and this, you're having supper, you are taking care of all your relationships as a woman. So that's awesome. And that's like such a huge cultural factor that comes in. For me, I pretty much my childhood was here in the US. So even though at home, we had that gender and cultural kind of factor where my brothers had very different expectations than I did. I was supposed to be home at a certain time. I was supposed to be doing more housework. I had more chores while they had none. So the gender and culture expectations were very much there. But when I walked out that door, it was a whole different world. So that definitely kind of also kind of makes like it's a struggle also because of course when you're going outside and people are like, hey, be you, take care of yourself, and at home it's like, no, don't be you, take care of them and them and them and them, then maybe we'll consider what you need. It's kind of a struggle in itself because then you have to figure out who do I listen to, and basically then you have to find that balance of your family and what you're hearing outside and kind of create something that is authentic to yourself. It's something you as a person are okay with, and that differs from each person. Your personality could, depending on your personality, you might lean towards more of taking care of your family, or you could lean more towards a career. And what I mean by that is basically if your personality is it's something you find joy um, just helping people, or let's say you find joy cooking. That's your personality. It has nothing to do with culture, has nothing to do with society. You just enjoy cooking. So either with that attribute, you could be at home catering or just cooking at home, or you could be going outside and becoming a chef. But then the kind of the culture and the society comes in. So then it's on you. What is your ideal self? What do you see yourself as? Who are you? Do you want to stay at home and cook, which is completely fine? Or do you want to go and bring it out into the world? And it takes very, very ambitious person and hardworking person because it's a whole different struggle building up a restaurant. And that takes a very strong person, especially when people are telling you, you cannot do this. But if you are a very strong person and you have that sense of self esteem and you believe in yourself, you're going to go out and do it. You're going to become a chef. But if your self esteem is not strong and maybe your personality is that you're okay, you're completely happy just staying at home and doing it. And that's nothing wrong with that. Some people get joy out of just feeding their family.
And I've seen another extreme. If you are not a crazy cook, then you're not a good person, good woman, or good wife, or good mother, because you're not 24/7 in the kitchen cooking.
That's another part of it.
You know, why can't we be who we want to be, you know, while performing our duties as well?
Yeah, I think there is so many ways that a woman can be balanced in the sense that she could take. So here's my thing: if a woman is taking care of herself, if she has a strong self-esteem, if she has a strong idea of her ideal self and what she wants to do and who she wants to be, she is much more likely to be a better friend, a better daughter, a better wife, a better mother, because she knows who she is. She knows exactly what to give to her kids because generational trauma. If you are self aware, you're not going to pass that on to your kids. You are going to know your triggers exactly. And it's so very, very hard to sit down and just feel the negative feelings, to feel the hard feelings and kind of untie them and go through them and feel everything you need to feel so you can get to the part of understanding why you're feeling this way. It's something maybe that happened to you as a child or something that someone said and unconsciously you're holding on to it, which could be a reason you're having a certain reaction to something that other people might find such a small thing. But so you need to know your trauma, your triggers, basically, and you need to self-explore to figure that out. And you need to do that before you pass them on to your kids. So I think that kind of falls back on parents to kind of pick that up so they don't do it to their kids. So they create a balanced idea of your social and identity and your self-identity. You have that barrier in between.
Yeah, that's so true. Because honestly, this helped me because I've seen around myself um, inappropriate practices done with how you raise kids. How damaging you can be to the kids, and how those kids grew up to be, weird people.
Just confused.
That really helped me to uh, shape my, or figure out my parenting style. It really helped me to understand how a child would, the things that could affect the child's personality, their belief system, what kind of person they will become if I treat them this way or that way. There's so many clashes in our culture. They want to love their kids too much, but then they don't want to discipline them. So it's like such an imbalance. Disciplining doesn't mean you don't love your child, or how you react when you lose yourself. When you are upset, when you're angry, how do you react? And do you lash out on your kids or not? Do you use foul language or not? How do you behave in a certain situation? Or even when you're happy, all of
Mhm.
that has great impact on the next generation you're dealing with, you're working with, you're raising another person. And if you know yourself better, if you know how to regulate your emotions and your behaviors in a healthy manner, of course, then you're going to be a better person to be around, and you're going to be a positive influence on anybody who is in your care. But for that, you have to know yourself.
Yeah.
So you really have to know yourself. And how do we go on that path, Navish? Because yeah, we should know ourselves. We should know how our emotions. We should know how to regulate them. We should know our behaviors. We should know the effects of our behaviors. We should know what I want, what I don't want. But how? Let's give our viewers some tools.
So
Um,
one of the things that definitely helped me, as I mentioned, was the psych courses. Just reading about different kind of trauma, a person unconscious thought that you could be doing. Just understanding your cognitions, your thought processes. It helps. So reading, just educating yourself, that's one thing. That's a little bit somewhere you can start. But the most, I think, important thing is just literally sitting down with yourself, just talking to yourself. So you could be thinking about something that happened on that day. For example, let's say you had a certain reaction to something your friend said, and you could just think like, why did I have such a strong reaction? Why was I so angry? What brought that on? Just talk to yourself and sit with that feeling. I think we have kind of been trained since we were child when it comes to negative emotions, we either ignore it or we either repress it. If a child is crying, you tell the child to just stop crying. You don't let the child sit with that feeling and help them regulate it. You just ask them to stop.
yeah,
And basically, then that child, when they grow up, they have to figure out, they have no idea how to self regulate. So then you just repress that trauma or that pain, and you have no idea how to take care of it. And one big way is just to literally sit down and talk to that child, talk to yourself, and just be kind to yourself and be open. One of the biggest thing I would say, just be honest with yourself. It is hard to look at kind of dark parts of yourself and supposed negative parts of yourself, but that those parts make you a whole. Those parts are something that makes you as a person. So you need to look at those parts and sit with them and understand them. Once you start understanding where that anger came from, the next time you're going to be able to catch that response. You are going to be able to kind of say to yourself, no, or maybe it won't be just important anymore, just because now you understand why you did what you did.
yeah,
And you're just going to be able to regulate it a bit more. And it's not going to be easy the first few. It could, if it's something big, it's going to take a lot of time. So then, okay, fine. You got angry with with your friend. And what do you do now? what should you do? Do you go to that person and communicate that you I just had a really strong reaction, and you just apologize and strengthen that relationship? Or if it is something that you have been brought up with, is just ignore that feeling. Fine, he's angry at me, I'm angry at him. Okay, fine, we're just gonna ignore him, we're not gonna be friends anymore. You can't go through life feeling that way. You're never gonna have a good relationship. So you need to sit down and talk to yourself, and you need to be honest with yourself and have that ability to communicate also. Because when you have more important relationships, like with your child, with your parent, with your spouse, you will need to know how to communicate also once you understand that feeling. So the first thing I would say is educate yourself, read, listen to podcasts, and listen to us, and just sit and think about what you are feeling and how you can kind of get beyond that and what you can do. And also, um, just be kind to yourself and then give yourself a challenge. So, for example, if something is causing you anxiety, if let's say you have social anxiety and you cannot just go up to a person and say hi, give yourself that small challenge. Just go up to a stranger and say hi. And same thing, if you have a hard feeling against something, let's say you're angry at your husband because he said something and you had a really bad reaction, you challenge yourself to say sorry. Be honest with him. Strengthen that relationship. To talk to your friend, talk to your mom and dad if need be. Just have it out. Because at the end of the day, I have to say that when you become a parent, you kind of start to understand that your parents are also human.
Yeah,
They have made mistakes too. Just how we are learning, they're learning. So you can, if possible, create that dialogue with your parent if possible. If not, then it's
probably
on you.
did their best what they knew. They probably did their best.
Yeah, because that's the kind of the upbringing they had.
Mhm.
Or they could even say, "Oh, at least I didn't beat you up. My parents beat me up." So for them, that's the next best thing. So we all, or parents, I think, as parents, we love our kids. We just try to do what we think
Yeah.
is best. And I think the culture and society definitely does not help. It truly does not help, because I remember when I had my daughter and she would cry all the time. So I would pick her up, and she was a month old. And everyone would be like, no, don't keep picking her up. She's going to get trained. She's going to keep crying and asking. And I'm like, she just came out of my body. She needs me.
Yeah.
And she's a month old. She doesn't have the tools to manipulate me.
Yeah.
All she knows is she needs me. And that's the end of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you look at it now, if you look at some studies, they actually are saying that if you are picking up your child, if you are helping your child soothe them, because they don't have the tools to self-soothe at that time, after a certain age, they're doing that. So now we know that you are supposed to pick them up.
Yeah.
But others would tell, and there were so many people who would tell me that. But I went with my inner gut, with my inner feeling of what I knew, that I don't care. You can say whatever you want. I think this is the best thing for my child. And that's where my idea of myself comes. If I came up with that inner dialogue and I had the self image of, I don't think I know anything, I don't think I can learn anything, or I'm not a good enough person, whatever that negative thought process is, that I cannot do this, just that sense of idea that I cannot do this. And if there are 20 people telling you, and trust me, when you become a mom, there are like 30 people telling you what to do.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a strong self identity and strong self-esteem, where you actually, okay, fine, they're saying this, let me go ahead and research this. Let
Yeah.
me go ahead and talk to my doctor about this instead of just taking it
How
in.
such an important point. We second guess ourselves so much, but we never second guess other people and their advices to us. It's like, oh my God, written on pathar pe likha hua, like
Mhm.
it can never change.
Yeah,
Uh, which is so weird, you
yeah.
know. Why do we do this?
But
Because
yeah,
we're taught to give more importance to everybody else than ourselves.
we have been brought up to give more, I think, our society and our culture is not individualistic. What's the opposite word? I can't remember it right now. It's not an individualistic society.
Social dependent something. Yeah, I forgot
I,
the word.
I forgot the word for it. So that our society is not about self, it's about the group. It's about if we
There
lived
needs to be a
in
balance, it's there needs to be a balance, not becoming a completely individualistic person, because that's what we see here in US and other places where we're just individualists, and like I just want to live like the way I want, and who all about me, me, me. And that's something we need to
Mhm,
understand, that there's a fine line between being selfish and self-care or self-worth, you know, self-love. There
mhm,
is a fine line between that. So yeah,
yeah.
it needs to be a balance.
Yeah, I think you are easily able to balance it if you have a strong idea of yourself.
Yeah.
If you know that giving in
Mm.
or picking your battles is not going to hurt you as a person, or if you just say, I don't accept it, and you move on and you don't let others' opinions bother you, that is a power in itself. And that takes a very strong person, that someone comes up to you and says, you are so ugly. And you're like, I don't accept that. I don't care. Who are you? And you walk away. Instead of letting that bother you all day long,
Mhm.
point where your self esteem has come all the way down. And I think another point of it is your self identity should not be based on one thing. It should not be limited to your physical appearance. Because if you have been brought up all your life being told you are beautiful, you will get anywhere you want, you can marry whoever you want, you will go places because you are gorgeous, and you start aging and your beauty is starting to go. Who are you? You have to sit there and ask yourself, who am I? I had this one perception of myself. I did not grow myself anywhere else. I didn't grow myself intellectually or even in relationships. Maybe you were super arrogant because you didn't want to be friends with ugly people. Whatever it was, it created your whole personality around that one small factor of yourself.
Mhm.
Then it's a problem. So you need to also not limit yourself to that one attribute. You need to grow yourself as a full person, as a whole person.
Mhm.
And your self-image is going to change as you age. It's going to keep changing as you get into different kinds of relationship, because as you have more attachments, as you have more stressors in your life, you are going to react very differently to. So if you are just an individual with just you, your stressor in life will be way different and your reaction to them will be way different compared to if you are a mother with 4 kids and you're trying to put them in the car. Your reaction to that stressor or someone coming up to you and saying something to you might be very different. You might turn around and yell at that person, or you might turn around and internalize it like, okay, I am really bad at this. Or just say, well, you're just having a hard day. It's going to get better. It's going to be fine. So your reaction to each will be very different. And that's why every day, pretty much every, I would say few days, sit with yourself. Anything big happens, sit with yourself. Why did I react that way? How can I change it? How can I get better? How can I act differently the next time? And also, how can I avoid it? If you know that first day of school is going to be super hard for you when your kids are off and you don't know what to do with yourself, build a toolbox of something that's going to help you. That's something that's going to make you look forward to that day, and you don't spiral into a dark place. You need to create those tools for yourself, and it's going to look differently for each person.
Good person, exactly, exactly. So yeah, the life, the things around us might not change, the people around us might not change, their treatments, our interactions with them might not change, but if we are doing well internally, a lot of things become very, very easy.
Yeah.
to understand and easy to.
Because the external factors will not phase you. It would just wouldn't matter
Mhm.
because what's the saying? You're the eye of the storm. Whatever happens doesn't matter to you. You are in a solid, calm place. And of course, it's not easy. It's not going to happen every day,
But
you
that
know?
reminds me of an ayah from the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how a believer is a palm tree. He's like a palm tree. So the storms are going to come and the branches are going to move all over, but the stem is so firmly in grounded that that does not shake. So the belief, the iman does not shake. So uh, which kind of like brings us to another point where your relationship with yourself is very much dependent on your relationship with the creator, with your creator. So it's really uh, if you have a good relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with your God, with your creator, it helps you to stay strong to your core, to who you are.
And that is, I think, one of the most important things ever
Mhm.
because it really does go back to your creator. It really does because at the end of the day, if let's say you are uncertain about something and you could read the Quran, you can read upon your rights, you can read about how it's supposed to be. And that could be that's how you grow roots. That's how you ground yourself. You could be like, this is not acceptable. Allah Ta'ala has said this is not acceptable. So I will not accept it. For example, let's say you have heard about forced arranged marriages and all that stuff about how arranged marriages sometimes are forced. And if you are in that position, you can turn around and say that this is not acceptable to me. And you could be unafraid about it because one, you are strong, you know what you're doing, you have that sense of self identity. Um, and you know that Allah Ta'ala made it this way, that you're not going to take it. But of course, I understand that it could look different from many. It depends on where you're living also. Because the culture and society, of course, it's easier to do it here in the US than it is to do it in, let's say, in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, because the culture and society won't let you do it. But you could still stand your ground. You could still say that this is not something that you should be doing.
The change has to come from somewhere, right? You could be the cycle breaker.
Yeah.
As soon as you recognize some things, you realize some things, you need to start acting upon it because that's how you gain power
Yeah.
and strength. If you don't practice it, then you're not going to get better ever in life, right? So as soon as you realize something is wrong or something is right, you got to do it or stop.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. And it could be that if you didn't do it at that time, it could be something that you can make sure it doesn't happen again with your own kids. You can make sure of that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's definitely hard for one girl to go against her whole khandan. It's not easy. It's not made easy.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's like kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week about knowing your rights and kind of standing up for them and demanding them.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important that and this thing and about self-identity, it's not just women, it's men also. They're also repressed. They're asked to hide their pain. They're asked to not cry because they're men. And they are asked to push to do a lot of things that they don't want to do. For example, if a boy wants to become an artist, he said, well, how are you going to financially take care of your family and your parents? How are you going to do that? And if he really, really wants to be an artist, and if he is creative and that's how he identifies himself, he's not going to be happy.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's both genders. To be honest, I think both genders are at a loss, and then they get married and just more unhappy.
Yeah, and I also feel like for men it's another issue. They are not encouraged to talk about their emotions. So they're not in touch with their
Yeah.
internal self. they are not in touch with their emotions, they're not in touch with their feelings, they don't know how to express it. But then again, that's another complaint I have, I would say, that, we all know how to express our anger and denials and, disapprovals. We
Mhm.
all know how to express that, but we just don't know how to express love and affection and care for somebody. So
No softer
I feel like
feelings.
that's a pick and choose kind of situation, which is not fair. Just like anything else, any other skill, we need to learn this skill too. We need to learn how to recognize our emotions. And as a guy, you're discouraged to cry, you're discouraged to speak up about your emotions, you're discouraged to talk, confide in someone, you're discouraged to speak about your issues, all those things. I mean, because it's looked as it's gonna make you look like a weak person, weak
Yeah,
man, if
yeah,
you are talking about these things, um, and or even taking stand for themselves. Sometimes men are also being abused, so
yeah,
speak
yeah,
up. They need to take stand.
yeah,
Are
definitely.
forced by their parents for a lot of things to do a lot of things, just like you mentioned. Career choice is the biggest thing. What no one literally is allowed to choose their career. No one, either girl or a boy, literally,
Yeah.
especially in our culture, it's very difficult to become something other than a doctor or an engineer, and it's still going on, which is so weird.
Mhm.
It's still going on in 2022, where there are so many ways of earning money, earning halal money. There are so many good ways. And especially as an entrepreneur or business, those are actually encouraged professions in Islam as well. So not everyone has a caliber to become a doctor or engineer. Not everyone has that brain. So
Yeah,
treat each person um, at their own level and how they are, how what they want to be. You know, yeah. So we need to allow people to be who they want to be, basically.
yeah, and definitely on point that men are not allowed to feel their emotions, their softer emotions. They're asked to repress that. And something I kind of recall is one thing that we learned was that anger is not a pure emotion. Anger is always a mask for either hurt or some kind of pain. And
Mhm.
that's how it manifests. So anger is it's always more behind that anger. It's not a pure emotion. And for men, I think they just don't know how to regulate or even understand what they're feeling because because anger is looked as a manly emotion, right? Oh, go ahead and tell her, man up. Like, that's the emotion they allowed to have. So that's the emotion they always have. Instead of feeling pain, instead of being hurt or sad, they instead show anger because that's the emotion, the one emotion they were allowed to have as a child. And even now, when boys act up, when the boys are angry, they're like, oh, boys will be boys. When they start breaking things,
Mhm.
because they're so angry and they don't know how to regulate themselves. And I don't mean in play, just when they're angry.
Mhm.
And it's, oh, that's how boys act up. That's how boys will be boys.
Right.
So that's definitely, I think, again, a tool that parents should have how to talk to not only their daughters, but also the men about how. And then it kind of goes the other way where women are not allowed to be angry.
Yeah.
They, yeah,
Yeah.
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 They're not allowed to be angry. They can be sad. They can cry. They can be happy. The best emotion is to be
Like
happy all
women
the
is
time.
क्या बोलते हैं ना कि मुजस्समा है आप सिर्फ मोहब्बत और
Yeah.
forgiveness, love and forgiveness, and that's all
Love
you
and
need.
forgiveness and happiness, always smile. Like there's the thing. So I didn't know about this until so in America. So I didn't know about this thing that is a very American thing where so it happened to me and I was very confused by it. So and apparently this happens to a lot of women here. Is like a man would come and say, "Why are you not smiling? Like, why don't you give me a smile?" Something like that. They would say. And the first time it happened, I was like, "What? Like, why?"
Mhm.
And I thought that was like because it was like a customer service thing or something, and I was just confused. So apparently, I heard from my other friends, it's like, "Oh, that's women are always supposed to be smiling,
Okay.
especially for a man." to a man. So that is actually, he actually took it personally that I wasn't smiling. And now it's become a trigger. So when my husband says, "Why are you not smiling?" I'm like, "Do I look like a robot to be smiling all the time?" And I think it is something that is innately, unconsciously there for men, that either, so I think, I don't know, this is my experience, you can correct me, is if men only know the emotion anger. So if a woman is disappointed or hurt or just in pain or just sad, they won't say, come up to you and say, "Oh, you look sad," or "You look irritated."
Mhm.
Nuances, emotions, subtle emotions. It's always like, "Oh, you look angry. Are you angry? Why are you angry?" Instead of annoyance and irritation.
What's your problem? Why are you always like that?
Yeah. Why are you not smiling? So I think it's because they bring their own perception to it, maybe. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud right now. But is their own perception because they were only the anger they recognize is anger. So if it's something negative a woman is giving out, to them it's anger. It can't be annoyance or
Or
just
it's
irritation.
just emotional. That's the term being used. Women are emotional as a negative thing. I mean, why? Why is there anything wrong with being emotional? Emotional does not mean a crazy person or an angry person or a maniac. That's not emotional. Emotional is also because I'm a soft hearted person, I care about you. Emotional is also about seeing somebody in pain and feeling that pain, being an empath. you know Emotional is also loving everybody unconditionally, how women usually love. you know
Mhm.
these are also emotions.
Yeah.
Don't look down upon these emotions.
No, no, those are much,
We
much
are
welcome.
women are supposed to give them, and everybody else is supposed to receive these emotions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything with your upsetting, anything like that, annoyance or anger or disappointments. Don't give me all those negatives. Just give me the positives.
Yeah.
I don't want to be receiving any of the negatives from you.
Yeah.
But on my end, you can just take all the negative, take it away from me.
Because I'm tired. I just came from
Absorb
work.
it. And
Tired.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For whatever reason, whatever reason. If
And I think another thing is that I don't know if this is a personality thing, gender thing, or what, but I think men tend to be problem solvers.
Mhm.
So they don't know what to do with those emotions. If you're sitting there crying, I don't know, watching a very sad movie and you start crying and they're like, "What do I do?" You don't have to do anything.
Mhm.
You just sit there and comfort her, or just like just sit there, don't do anything. Like, sometimes women feel a lot sometimes, but it could be hormonal, it could be anything. Hormonal in the sense when you have a child, your hormones are all over the place and you're just crying about the smallest thing because you're so tired also.
That's
So,
situational. As a person, you could also be a sensitive person.
right. You could be thinking about something that you heard or something saw on the news and just feel a certain way. And
Exactly.
I think something that men have to understand is that you don't have to do anything.
Think about it. Yeah. Just acknowledge
Empathy.
those emotions, acknowledge them, honor them. Why not? Why am I not allowed to feel the way I feel?
Right.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
Yeah, like feelings are feelings, and this is how I feel. So
Why do I
I
have to
don't
justify
need.
every time I feel a certain way? I have to justify or explain why.
Right, right. Like, yeah, that's pretty annoying trying to justify because sometimes you don't understand yourself why you're feeling that way. And you just want the other person to just the empathy or just acknowledgement or validation, like, okay, this is how you're feeling, and just sit with them. And I think that's scary because again it goes back to them not understanding or feeling those emotions, and it makes them feel uncomfortable because they don't know what to do with it. And
Yeah.
any other way is like, okay, do you want me to do something, do you want me to get you something, instead of, okay, let me just sit with you and just understand or just hear you out.
But see, that's at least these are the good men who are trying to do something.
That's true. The other spectrum of it is like, oh, should okay,
Yeah,
let's go.
exactly. Again, all over again.
Yeah. It's not, chalta rehta. It keeps
Yeah,
happening. Whatever. Move
yeah.
on.
I feel like then women never feel heard because of that, and spouse is somebody who you want to rely upon uh, with everything, with your emotions.
Yeah.
You're financially dependent on your spouse mostly.
Mm,
Most of the women are, but we also want to be emotionally um, cared for as well.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
need that.
And I think yeah, definitely we want that emotional
Reassurance,
investment.
just a reassurance, and an acknowledgement. That's all you need to feel heard
Yeah.
and respect. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that also goes back to your self identity. If you don't have a type of spouse who is going to sit down with you, who is going to validate or acknowledge, what do you do with yourself then? How do you self regulate? Are you going to start feeling resentment towards that person? Or are you going to start doubting yourself that maybe I am too much? Maybe I am too emotional. Maybe I need to tone it down because I sound like a crazy person or whatever. Instead of, no, this is in this moment, this is what I feel. It makes me completely normal. This is just what I feel right now. And also, I think another thing is that you need to know how to love yourself and be happy with yourself. Right? If it ever comes a time when you need to spend time just with yourself, like be alone,
Mhm.
and I don't mean that permanently, just temporarily, you should like your own company.
Yep.
Right? You
Yeah.
should like your own company. You should not be leaning so very heavily on other people to make you happy.
Mhm.
Because no person, once in a while, yes, when you're sad and all that, I'm not talking about that. But I am talking about that idea of a happy fairy tale, happy ending, where
Code.
you burden the other person for your happiness to always make you happy. And that person is also human. He cannot take that burden. And this goes with for both men and women. I think
Yeah.
some
It's
some
not
women
fair with that.
marry.
Yeah. It's not fair with that person either. You expect too much from them. And again, like you brought up a very important point where you should not be emotionally dependent on someone to an extent that if you don't receive that response, then you are broken down. You should be strong enough to hold yourself up, take care of yourself, emotionally dependent to an extent where you're okay by yourself also, and you can soothe
Yeah.
yourself.
And you then take away the power of someone gaslighting you,
Yeah.
of someone telling you that you are crazy to be feeling that way. If I am, I don't know, looking at pictures of women, it is completely fine. I'm not cheating on you. Something weird like that. And if you start doubting yourself, it's kind of a downward spiral from there. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
that's like one of if you really need to know yourself, to know your emotions and able to regulate yourself instead of depending on other people. That's for sure.
yeah.
And also, another thing that happens is if you have that strong sense of identity, you are lessened to make yourself um, become what others want you to be and then be unhappy. For example, let the kind of same thing with the parents. Because if you are, as you said, if you're a people pleaser, you are going to want to do things to please them and you are never going to be happy. So that's another, and it could be a bigger issue if you're married and this person wants to change you completely and you go ahead and do that. And sometimes, sadly, uh, make you in a person who is less connected to your creator.
You basically lose yourself in that process.
You're losing yourself in that person. And one day that person turns around and says, I don't like who you are right now. And what do you do? Because you never were your authentic self. You never created your own self image and your ideal self. And it's really important to have that because unfortunately, like what I'm seeing right now is girls have been brought up with the idea that you are a blank slate and you get married and you become your husband's. If that husband asks you to give up hijab, you do it. If your husband tells you to wear certain types of clothes, you do it. If your husband, I mean, it's all husband. It's all husband instead of what is actually right in a religion. What is the correct thing to do? And
even
that is
even
so
even
bad.
practicing your faith, it's a problem because if I want to wear a hijab, if I want to dress a certain way, whatever is my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I want to follow Islam, uh, based on the commands of the Quran and Sunnah, but my husband does not, if he does not get along with that, if it's his thinking is different, then I will still be accountable for not
Yeah,
fulfilling my duties towards Allah, right?
yeah,
I cannot stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say that, oh, my husband didn't allow me to wear hijab, or my husband didn't allow me to do this or that, or pray. Even like sometimes men don't allow women to their wives to pray. So
mm,
to this extent, and I'm not talking only with respect to Islam, any faith, any kind of faith practice, spiritual practices. These are our birthrights, right?
mm.
To us by God, and if we are not given, if we have given all the power and control to another human being, how are you going to? Uh, then where do you stand with your Creator? Like
Yeah,
to me,
that's
that's
so.
the highest, most important relationship in my life. And that does not work because I'm just listening to this person,
Mhm.
and trying to please this creation, not the creator, pleasing the creation. It does
Right.
not make sense. Yeah.
It
To
doesn't
what
make
extent?
sense.
I mean, am I worshiping my husband now? What's going on? I mean, this is the extent I'm seeing women giving in for their
Yeah.
husband.
Yes. And even before marriage, like sometimes they would be like, oh, you're gonna get more rishtas if you give up your job. Or even women coming into the house. And this is the point of ridiculousness of where the mom will go up to the girl and say, like, oh, you should take off your hijab, then I'll go ahead and we can get married then.
Yeah.
And thankfully, like the girls that this happened to, they knew their own self-identity. And they were like, no, we are not doing that. That we have not put it on for a person.
Yeah.
We have put this on for a creator and we trust in our creator and he will take care of us. And that's the type of belief
Yeah.
you should have in your creator, that he will take care of it if you walk the right path.
Yeah.
And that is, it really does come down to your self-identity. Because if you have a strong sense of identity, if you're not a people pleaser, if you walk out and you make friends that are not the best crowd, and if you are a people pleaser, you're going to fall down the path
Mhm.
because you want to please those friends, and maybe they help you forget. It happens, and maybe
Yeah.
that's how it
You,
builds up. Yeah,
you fall for the peer pressure. That's true. Yeah.
yeah.
That's right. Yep. All right. Awesome. Good. So let me quickly wrap up. I have a list of 6 action items we can work on to figure out who I am, who you are. Um, and these are just guidelines. You may have more ideas, and please do share with us if you have any more ideas besides these. But to start, here you can begin with, inshallah. So number one is that, knowing yourself, mindfulness. I'm gonna These 6 steps basically kind of are going to wrap up our whole conversation, inshallah. So number one is knowing yourself, being mindfulness, paying attention to your thought processes and acknowledging them, your thought process and the patterns. You acknowledge them and you actively practice non-judgment. Okay, when you are realizing the way you're thinking or not thinking, don't judge yourself. Work on it, inshallah. If you need to work on them, work on it. Number two, notice how you identify yourself in relations to your roles and performances in life. Notice all of that. There will be flaws in it, there will be good in it. So again, go back to number one, acknowledge all those things and accept. Number three, jot down your thoughts, thought processes, self definitions. What do you think about yourself? And this way you can work on yourself better. If there is anything negative you want to eliminate, you can. And on the positives, you can work more on that, or you can add or delete, however you want to grow, inshallah. Number four, accept yourself as a whole. No one's perfect, and no one is ever going to be perfect. So we're not working for perfection, we're working for improvements, inshallah. So we're gonna strive to be better every day. And that is the journey of growth. There are going to be good days, there are going to be bad days. That's a part of life. Emotions will come and go. Feelings are going to come and go. Don't define yourself based on how you feel today or in the moment, especially the negative ones, because we are really quick to believe the negatives about ourselves. So accept yourself as a whole. You're going to have flaws. You're a human being, right? Number five is identify your core values. What do you stand for? Like courage, integrity, compassion, empathy, things like that, And this can also be defined by your spirituality or your relationship with your creator. It can be more defined through that. Also your values, where your values are coming from, basically. Number six, define yourself in positive ways. That is the real you. This is what I tell my clients, right, and anyone I talk to, that the time you were positive, or you're doing the good things, that is the real you. Don't lose that. Don't lose sight of that. In the moment, if you're acting weird or angry or upset, that is not you. That is something you need to work on, maybe, but that's not the core person you are. You are innately a positive, a good person. You're not evil. Nobody's born evil. So don't think yourself as an evil person, inshallah. So these are a few tips or guidelines or tools which you can use to figure out who you are, inshallah. And let me tell you, once you start living your life like this, you are going to be driving how people are treating you.
Yes.
The way you treat yourself is how people will be treating you. So that's very, very important. And any last advices,
Yeah,
anything?
I think the perfect way to end it, how you treat yourself is
Mhm,
how you allow others to treat you is how they're going to treat you.
mhm.
And I think the list pretty much encapsulates everything we talked about. I think, alhamdulillah. So inshallah, I hope these things, even if you don't do all of them, you strive to try to do. I think especially the diary. I think that's like really, really good just to jot down your thoughts.
Yeah.
Just everything. Just jot it everything. It's a good decompressor. I think it's perfect.
And I think another important thing would be don't judge yourself.
Yeah,
While working
exactly.
on these things, don't judge yourself. It's very important.
We tend to be so much harsher on ourselves.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind.
yeah. All right. So thank you so much for joining us today, and hit like and share. Um, Tell us, how are you um, liking our podcast or our talks? And if you have any ideas, let us know. If you want to talk, if you want us to talk about some things, and if there is an issue, if there is something that's bothering you, let's chat. All right.
Yeah.
Take care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.
And shall I see you next Wednesday? So, alaikum.